Hey, what's up, guys? Alright, so one thing I've been loving about this party arc is that literally ever since the demon's been introduced and he's basically taken up the spot as the main antagonist for the entire thing, is that with each chapter, we get more clear, defined details about exactly what happened 500 years ago throughout the Massacre of the Elves. Because before he's been introduced, it's basically been we kind of knew what was going on. We got like hints and flashbacks here and there. We had Patrick's recollection of what happened, but we didn't know the exact truth. But ever since he's been introduced, we finally are getting the actual details of what actually happened. Because alright, there's a part of this chapter where the demon is talking about exactly what his plan was for 500 years ago, and he does confirm that Lich's grimoire was the original grimoire he was trying to turn into the Grimoire of Despair. But he mentions, and actually this is the most important part of like what he basically describes or what he reveals in this chapter from his original plan, is that when he was so close to creating Grimoire of Despair, just when the Grimoire was actually created, they got in his way and basically foiled his plans. So this basically brings up the question of exactly who they are. And basically I have two possibilities of who the characters or who the people he's talking about could be. So it could either be Lich and Techia, that somehow the two of them were able to basically in that moment foil his plan in some way. I can't exactly know for sure. We'll have to find out later on how. On the other hand though, my other option could be that it was actually Lich and the first Magic Emperor. So yeah, it basically comes down to either being Lich and Techia who stopped his plan, or was the Lich and the first Magic Emperor. Now the reason why I don't think it could just be like Techia and the first Magic Emperor and completely excluding Lich is because it's something I'm going to talk about later on in the video. Okay, so the chapter picks up pretty much where the last one left off, with Asta and Yuno attacking the demon. And alright, so in this chapter, even in this very beginning, in this first page of the chapter, it does a great job of setting up the entire theme of the chapter, which is basically despair, which has kind of been the theme for the past 3 chapters ever since the demon's been introduced. But anyway, basically, this part of the chapter, when we actually see Asta and Yuno attacking the demon and the reaction to the demon has to their attack, it completely does a great job subverting our expectations of what would happen in this moment during any other Shonen Jump series. Because alright, during a normal battle Shonen Jump manga or anime series, in the moment where an opponent who's overpowered shows up and a main character, maybe 2 main characters, have to power up and combine their attacks in order to defeat him, usually they actually end up doing a pretty good amount of damage to their opponent, forcing the opponent either to flee or to power up himself in order to basically fight on par with them or even to surpass them. But in this case, instead of that happening, we see that Asta, despite the fact that they powered up slightly in the last chapter in order to do their combined attack against the demon, they only managed to land a small scratch on his left arm. That's it, just a small scratch, no significant damage whatsoever. And to make matters even worse, in the moment after they attack him, he just says heal, and it heals his arm completely. So even that small amount of damage that they dealt to him in that chapter, after putting all their effort into that attack, that gets taken away from them right there. And this is actually kind of the problem when it comes to characters who actually have a power like this, who can basically use their words to manipulate reality in any way they want to, is that they become extremely overpowered. Because if the demon wanted to, he could have instantly just told Asta, to die. He could have said sliced them in half, something like that, and they would have been instantly killed. At this point, he's basically just playing around with them. He has no intention of actually doing the dirty work himself. And that's the reason why when you have characters like this, it's usually a good idea to put some kind of limitations on them. Like maybe the fact that, using this type of magic would drain a lot of mana from him, or that he has to say a word a certain amount of times, like maybe 3 times or 2 times, a certain amount in order to activate the spell, or that he can only use the spell like 1 or 2 times, like he can only say a certain word once, like so how he used heal in this chapter, he won't be able to use it again. But as far as we've seen with the demon so far, there seems to be no limitation on what he can do with his word magic. So basically this demon is pretty much the most broken character I've seen in a long time for manga, because it doesn't seem like there's any real limitations that he has. Because seemingly he has an endless supply of mana, there is no special requirements for his word magic, and there are no limitations on it. And based off what he's been saying these past few chapters, since he doesn't even have the grimoire that he's been after yet, it seems like this isn't even his full power yet. We basically only ever seen one other character overpower Yuno and Asta at the same time, the way the demon does in this chapter, and that was actually the real Lich. Now, this kind of leads to me basically thinking, or at least this is one of the reasons why I think it's going to come down to in the final battle for the arc, basically being the real Lich versus this demon. And here's the other reason why I think that, and this is actually because of a comment I saw after reading this week's chapter, which was basically someone had commented on the fact that the reason why Lich let Asta get away with the demon Slay or the Demon Destroyer sword and actually took the Demon Slayer sword from him is because he wanted to use the Demon Slayer sword in order to fight against the demon. And you know what? This actually makes a lot of sense if you think back to the chapter where Yuno and Asta actually were fighting against the Lich. Because in that chapter, when it was Yuno, Asta, and Mimosa fighting off against the Lich, he could have easily killed all three of them without any effort. He could have taken them all out. In fact, in that last attack, when he actually just sends them flying out of the castle, he could have killed them with that attack. But instead, he basically sends them flying out of the castle with very minimal damage being done to them. And that kind of always, I always questioned the reason why he did that. If he actually was intending to actually kill them in that moment, why did he do that? It could have been very easily for him to kill them, even without Patry or Raya or anyone else's help. He could have easily killed them right there. So why did he just settle for sending them out and letting them fall to their deaths without confirming they're dead? And basically, after reading this theory, it actually makes a lot of sense. The reason why he did that is because of the fact that he actually didn't want to kill them off. He basically, on purpose, let Asta take the Demon Slayer or the Demon Destroyer sword from him because he knew that Asta would need a Demon Destroyer sword in order to actually break the reincarnation spells from all the people who are being reincarnated as elves. And it could be that the reason why he took the Demon Slayer sword is because he thinks that's the sword most suited for fighting against this demon based off his own abilities. Although I'd probably argue that the Demon Dweller sword would probably be a better bet, considering how it's more agile, more fast, and actually has the ability to absorb other magical properties. But at the same time, the Lich knows his swords better than anyone, so I guess he actually does have a plan as to why he took the Demon Slayer sword over the Demon Dweller sword. Most likely because that one's kind of better suited for offensive attacks since it's heavier and actually would do more damage. But I don't know, I feel like the Demon Dweller sword would have been a better choice. So after the demon finally gets the Grimoire of Despair and he's ready to leave, he decides to turn Patry in order to basically, have him fight off against Asta and and instead turns Patry into a Dark Elf. Which, during that part of the chapter, right before he actually turns fully into a Dark Elf, we see Asta to have a flashback to basically all the other times he fought against elves and they actually started to go demonic. It seems like in that moment when they actually were going demonic, if they, instead of trying to blow themselves up, would have just basically gave into their despair and anger, would have turned into a Dark Elf like Patry did in this chapter. And this is actually kind of interesting because of the fact that we had already introduced dwarves, elves, witches, and demons. I figured eventually we would basically be going down the entire roster of D&D characters or D&D races and actually would get Dark Elves as their own race eventually. But the fact that we're kind of taking that and saying, no, Dark Elves are actually just demonic elves or demonic versions of elves, they don't occur naturally, kind of means that we basically won't be seeing them as like their own race or their own type of species throughout the series unless we deal with more demonic formed elves. But yeah, in this new Dark Elf form, Patry's actually a lot more powerful than he originally was, and he actually kind of pushes Asta and to the breaking point in order just to survive his initial attack. Because after he attacks them with his new magic, basically said even with Monozone, he was just barely able to dodge the attack, and he even didn't fully dodge it. He actually ended up taking a few scratches, or like he actually got stabbed in his left arm. And then when it comes to Asta, he mentions the fact that if it wasn't for the anti-magic that's covering his body, absorbing most of the blow, he would have died instantly from that attack without any question. Now, when Asta actually tries to reason with Patry and tries to get him to basically turn back to normal, Patry seemingly, I guess he's kind of subconsciously aware of what's going on right now, basically upon hearing Asta's words, does exactly what he was trying to do back when he fought against Asta and Yami the first time, which is he uses his magic attack that basically creates a spear around him and it's basically going to blow himself up, kind of like what all the other elves have tried to do when they've been defeated so far. And in this moment, we basically see, this is when we actually find out that Yami and Nozel are actually on their way to the site in order to help out in the fight. And that's pretty much where the chapter ends. So basically, I'm guessing next week's chapter is going to go like this. We're going to have and Asta go off to chase after the demon in order to fight against him, while Yami and Nozel face off against Patry. Now, I'm not exactly sure how the two of them actually would stand up against Patry. I get the reason why they would want to fight against him because they both have personal grudges against him. But in his new Dark Elf form, I don't see them actually standing that much a chance against him. Now, we actually do see that Valdos and Rades are hiding in the shadows, kind of scared to step out of it because they don't know what's going to happen to them. I could see Valdos being somewhat useful in this fight because of the fact that he has spatial magic and actually could teleport them the way Finral usually does. But I don't exactly see how Rades could be useful in this moment. But, we'll have to wait to see exactly how the four of them would stand up against Patry. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it for the chapter. That's it for the review. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.